Now to a genocide in California, the systematic slaughter and enslavement during which tens of thousands of Indigenous Americans were killed, a brutality that knew no bounds and set up camps in the 1800s that had elements later seen in atrocities like that of Nazi Germany and beyond. It's a history long hidden. It's the topic of a book that was published in English a while ago, but has just become available in French. An American Genocide, the United States and the California Indian Catastrophe. Well, historian and author Benjamin Madley joins us now to tell us a bit more about it. Thanks so much for your time. And can I start by asking you, you grew up, I believe, in California. What led you to wanting to write about this part of the past?
Thank you very much for having me here this evening. So I grew up in a little town called Happy Camp, near the Oregon border, very small town, the dominant population of Native people. And so while I was growing up, I got to see the conflicts ongoing between colonists and colonizers and Indigenous people in the area over things like water rights, fish, timber, and gold. And I began to hear stories about the origins of this process and the idea that my town, Happy Camp, was named not Happy Camp because so much gold was found there, but because the initial massacre that took place there was large enough to make the gold miners happy. And so I spent years of my life researching this story in archives all across the United States, from Yale to Berkeley and many places in between.
The brutality that you describe is shocking, even with what we're seeing going on in the world today. Can you give people just an idea of exactly what happened in California at the time?
So between years 1846 and 1873, the Indigenous population in California plummeted from approximately 150,000 people to not more than 30,000 survivors. And scholars have long studied this. We've looked at starvation, we've looked at disease, we've looked at displacement. But when I looked at the archives, it became clear that this was, in fact, a case of state-sponsored genocide. The killings were carried out by 24 separate volunteer state militia expeditions, also by the United States Army, and finally by vigilantes. And all of this ended up being paid for, first by the state to the tune of more than $1.5 million, almost all of which was then reimbursed to California by the United States Congress. So we could say that if the state of California were the architects of this man-made catastrophe, the United States government paid for almost all of the killing.
It's interesting as well to see how that hatred and fear was generated. But your book also, we were just looking at the cover of it there, and that chief on the cover, it's also about the survival and the fight back. Can you start maybe by telling us a bit more about the chief that's on the front cover of your book in English? I believe he went with, maybe 50 men to challenge that onslaught.
So the man on the picture of the English version of the book is Kintpuash, also known as Captain Jack. And this is a photograph that he sat for voluntarily at a photographer's studio in the town of Wairika in Northern California. And he would go on to lead a very small group of Modoc men, women, and children who returned to the lava beds of Northern California that they were from. And they dug in there and faced a hugely, overwhelmingly superior force of vigilantes, regular United States Army troops with artillery, and militiamen from both Oregon and California. And finally, he voluntarily surrendered, but the United States Army decided to try him in kind of kangaroo court trial. He was ultimately hanged and then beheaded, and his head was pickled and shipped east to Washington, D.C. to be displayed there.
I mean, yeah,